Hello. I think my voice cracked. So, a little bit of information. This week I am going to tell a story. Haven't done this since, what year is it? 2012, I think. 7 years. It's been a while. And ironically, despite that, this story is going to come from high school. But before that, just a little bit of information about updates and all that. So, as you might have guessed, or as might be evident, so studio is kind of divided up this summer. We got Alex back in Indiana. We got some peeps who are up north. And then I'm kind of all over the place because of the job I'm working. It's especially for youth. Good program. So I've been kind of all over the place traveling. And so it's been a little tricky to do films and whatnot. Here's a little secret. We tried to record the podcasts like Kush and Kush D&D. We try to record those every single week on the weekends because that's when we're all available. But for like the last 3-4 weeks in a row, because of different life commitments and whatnot, we haven't been able to put it together. And then last night, because today's Sunday, last night we had it all set up to record, but the Wi-Fi I was using, for whatever reason, wouldn't let me make video calls. And I managed to figure out, a way to get that all reconfigured. But by the time I did that, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and a little too late for that. So normally this would be a podcast, but because that didn't work out, I figured it's time to tell a story again. I haven't done that in a while. Videos wise, we got a lot of different skits and stuff we're working on. We actually have this really, really cool plot arc that we're doing. Last week's video might have kind of slightly hinted that. And yeah, it's going to be fun. And yeah, there's a bunch of skits. We get to see a little bit more of what Glasses is doing in Universe 1B. We get to bounce back and see what others are doing in Universe 1A. Kara, we're going to be bringing in her character into the forefront of everything. And then all the different people that have been part of the podcast, they do have a role in different videos moving forward. So it's really cool. Studio's expanding, getting more people. Little bumps along the way, but I mean, that's part of the process, learning, growing. But you probably didn't click on this video to hear me talk about why you're not getting a skit this week. You're here because you saw my beautiful face on the thumbnail and you want to hear a story. So, let's get started. Story time. So, this goes back to high school. It was my sophomore year. And I was hanging out, so the high school I went to, and this is the same high school where, if you go back really, really far in the videos, there's one that's called Lights. That video is actually about my 9th grade creative writing class at this school. This was a really small school, like tiny. Like, ghostly singing, that's fine. It was a really tiny school. Our total student population was about 280 students. My graduating class was like 30. It's tiny. And so all our buildings and everything were in these portables. So it was very, very tiny campus. Wonderful school, loved it. Just good school, very good school. And so I was hanging out with some friends at lunchtime, and we were hanging out in the classroom that was the math teacher's classroom. Great guy, wonderful teacher. And the thing you gotta know about this math teacher, he was the most terrifying human being that any of us had ever met. Until we actually got to know him, then he was like the greatest human being ever. Just so wonderful. But he's very, very good at seeming like this terrifying person. Which I think is great because, as freshmen, you're trying to figure out what to expect, and there are some freshmen who like to really push the boundaries of life. I was not one of them. That's being perfectly honest. No. But I was still terrified. So with this terror thing aside, like I said, this is my sophomore year, so I'd already gotten over. I'd already gotten over the whole terror thing. I was super chill. That's the reason why we were hanging out in this room. Also, I think we had a class afterwards. So it was me and one of my buddies. We called him Perry. To this day, there's still a lot of debate as to why we called him that. We all have different versions of the story. Of course, he has the correct version of the story, but there are other versions I prefer. My favorite version being that someone thought he looked like Perry the Platypus. I guess if Perry the Platypus was blonde or had hair at all. Anyway, so he and I were hanging out, just chilling, and we were bored, and we decided that it would be a good time because why not? We decided that it would be a good time to start a marvelous and frivolous round of Ninja, the classic hand-slapping that game. Yes, Ninja. The beautiful thing of our childhoods. So we decided to go 1v1 on Ninja. And of course, when you're going 1v1, your moves are a lot quicker. You don't have to wait for like 10 other people to do stuff. Although, we did have one time where we had like 40 people play Ninja. This was also at that high school. I'm just saying. It was cool. So we were going 1v1, and we're just hanging out, chilling, and we're doing all sorts of kind of ridiculous moves. And I was a fan of randomly kicking as part of my move, even though I was trying to hit his hands with my hands, because we weren't doing feet rules, we were just doing hands. So it was, hit the hand, you're out. So I was kicking a lot. I don't know why. I just was. I was a weird kid. Still am. And they're just kicking around a lot. We're goofing around. We're making it very overdramatic. And we were up near one of the walls in this math classroom. And on this wall, there were a bunch of posters that were made as part of like a final project by students. So these were like juniors who'd made these posters. And so, we didn't really think much of them. I mean, after you see them like the first couple days in class, you kind of like tune them out, it's a blank wall. There's nothing there. It's just scribbles. It's a scribbled wall for some reason. And so we didn't really think much of it. And so we're goofing around, and because I like to kick a lot, I went for this really dramatic move where I raised my foot, and it just so happened to touch the wall, like so. And when it did this, without even really thinking, I brought my foot down, but it was like, I basically straight up stomped it off the wall. That's the best way I can describe it. Like my foot went up and then it just came down onto the ground. And when it was coming down, somehow there was enough friction on like the, because it wasn't flat on my shoe. It was like just a little bit on the side. There was just enough friction and enough force to tear that poster, this big poster, right off the wall. And I smashed it onto the ground, leaving a permanent little footprint on it, forever immortalizing the catastrophe that I'd created. And once that happened, my eyes went wide, Perry's eyes went wide, and we just felt like a dark presence behind us. A dark presence that was sitting behind the math teacher's desk and was the math teacher. And we turn, and he didn't speak a word. But if looks could kill, we'd already be halfway down the path of no return. That's all I'm saying. And in that brief moment, Barry and I, we talked about it later, and we both were thinking the same thing. We are going to die. It didn't matter that this was a poster. In that very moment, I knew that what I had done was a crime that was so heinous that only my life could pay the price. And we didn't speak a word. We were too awestruck, dumbstruck, fear-struck. Yes, the last one. We were too struck in order to talk. And he didn't raise his voice. All he did is he just looked at the two of us with a glare that could have cut through titanium. And he just said, "Go outside." And I swear that those words were like semi-magical or something along those lines, because I tell you what, we were outside before we realized we were outside. We did not die. I kind of hoped that would be obvious, but we didn't die. He didn't talk about it again after that. After that, everything was fine. You know, poster disappeared. That spot on the wall was blank for a while. He never held a grudge. He never mentioned it. We told everyone about it because, you know, we wanted to share with them how we had narrowly escaped death. And I will say this, though. Call it a coincidence if you wish. But the next year, because the end of that year, I'd designed a poster for the final. And if you want, you can say that's just pure coincidence, but the exact spot where I'd torn off the poster was the exact spot where my poster hung the entire next year. So, yeah.